So welcome everyone who is in the room and those of you who will be watching by recording. This is part 2 of an academic writing session, and I forewarn you that I have more slides to cover today, and they are more dense than usual. So be prepared. If you don't catch it all, some of these concepts it took me years to wrap my head around. You will have the recording, and you'll be able to watch it more than once if you need to. So no trouble with that. Welcome to everybody who's in the room. Primarily, we have people in their second and third years here today. That means writing literature reviews, writing the final thesis or getting close to that. And the ideas that we're covering today are very important for that section of the PhD process, no matter what your degree is. I like to start with quotes. We're going to use the same ones as we used last week because William Zinsser is probably the world's best writer about writing, and I don't think you can do more than take these words to heart. Don't make lazy word choices. You'll never make your mark as a writer unless you develop a respect for words and a curiosity about their shades of meaning. That is almost obsessive. And certainly you will think that your examiners have an obsessive curiosity and knowledge about the shades of the words you are using. So the English language, any language probably, is rich and strong and supple words. Take time to root out and find the ones you want. And you do that in academic writing by doing a lot of academic reading. So at this point, you should be reading other theses. You should be gathering in your head the thought processes and how people put the words together. On the other hand, avoid jargon and big words. Clearer thinking becomes clear writing. One can't exist without the other. And if you find that you are relying on jargon of your field, and certainly some fields have more of it than others, think about whether or not you might not yet be hitting the mark on the very real context of your study. Recently, we were working with a student who used very long words, and he regularly was pointing to his field. And then once his advisor came back with the requirement that he go back and work on the context and purpose of his study, once he got that, all the words became more clear. So think to yourself, if you are relying on theoretical or language that's from your field, maybe you haven't gotten deep enough into what is important about your field to the rest of the world. Just a hint. Writing is hard work. A clear sentence is no accident. Very few sentences come out right the first time or even the third time. And today we're going to talk about how to work with sentences. And so there we go. Just a quick overview. Where are we going today? We're going to start with the exercise with which we ended last time. It's a very good exercise. And then we're going to talk a little bit about technology that helps. And from there, we're going to go into the big ideas of today, which are editing, coherence, and habits. So thank you for being here, and off we go. The exercise was, somehow my slides want to jump 2 at a time today. This is the proven sequence for writing. You design the internal flow of what you want to say in your head and through your headings. So these are the big ideas. Then you decide on the points that will add up to those big ideas, and each one of those points becomes a paragraph. 1 point per paragraph, very important. Then you arrange the paragraphs under the headings, and then a reader sees the heading, sees where we're going, and one by one goes through the points until the heading makes sense. During the editing process, you then go back through that same setup. You take out redundancy, you take out common sentence structures. For instance, some people tend, all of us probably, when we're doing the first draft, have a tendency to say the sentence in the same way. Well, that repetitive sentence structure over the course of hundreds of pages is just so awful, the reader can't stand it. So you watch out for that in your editing, and then you update your first sentences to be provocative. Now that's just a good sequence that you can superimpose on any writing, any time in your life, and it will help. What we did for an exercise was we suggested that you take that mode of writing and you analyze someone else's work. So I said that if you're a thesis writer, you should be reading theses, dissertations if you're in the United States. So what you want to do is you want to open up a new dissertation. You want to read through the table of contents, heading by heading by heading. That should tell you where the person's going, whether or not it's in line with where you want to go, whether the methodological choices are similar, what you think of the literature, how you think it's laid out. You can tell a lot by analyzing the table of contents. Then choose a chapter, read a heading, and then read the paragraphs under that heading and decide, is there just one point per paragraph? Is it clear what that point is? If not, if it gets a little like the kind of writing, academic writing that you want to go to sleep, probably you have more than 1 point per paragraph. It's the most common challenge that makes this writing difficult. The more simple you can be with your points and your paragraph structure, and still remain provocative with your language and your ideas, the faster you will get there, your examiner will be able to zip through and give you high marks. Do all the points add up to the heading? Are the lead sentences provocative? And did the writer fall into any patterns of writing? So that was the exercise. If you weren't here last week and you didn't do the exercise, it's highly recommended. Raise your hand if those in the room, if you did do the exercise. Annalene, can you give us a sentence or two about your experience? And we'll give her a moment to write. One of the challenges with asynchronous structure is that it'll take her a little while to get her sentences down. But I think it's useful to hear, what somebody learned. Annalene, what did you learn by doing it? I think that's probably the key question. Made you read more critically. Well, that's excellent, because all of a sudden, if you can analyze someone else's work, you're closer to being able to analyze your own. The truth is, nobody analyzes their own all that well, but we can get better when we strengthen our critical analysis skills. Annalene, did you learn anything about writing in particular? Something you might want to do, perhaps, or something you don't want to do, perhaps? And it's fine to say no. It's just critical. It's useful just to be critical. Coherence was slightly lacking, so be more clear. Okay, excellent. Well, that'll lead into today's conversation, so you may have things that you want to add later as well. Okay, brief look at technology. Doctoral Net sites are set up in 3 phases, and phase 2 is the writing of the first 3 chapters, which is the first time people writing a thesis or dissertation run into the challenges of length, of coherence, of not being redundant, and and trying to be provocative in an academic sense. Everybody who's doing a master's or a PhD has already proven yourself to be a good student, and you know yourself as somebody who can have smart ideas. It's a full stop more difficult to have those smart ideas on paper. So don't worry over much if your writing doesn't live up to the you have in your head. That will come with time. Now, the Doctoral Net sites will help you a lot throughout the entire phase 2 and a good portion of phase 3 menus on the web. That's where you read about what writing is. You can also do a search and search on paragraph structure and how to use bibliographic software so that your writing is better. There's checklists, all kinds of things. And if you sign into the site, the middle tab is where you can choose academic writing as a skill, and it will bring you up direct things. So that's the basics of the micro content pieces that are part of the process on the website. Now, the thing about writing is that most of us type. Some of us type with 1 or 2 fingers, and that requires that we look down, at least lower our eyes. And yet, our prefrontal cortex is at the top front of our brains, and that's where we put words together and we put complex ideas together. Do you see the disconnect? You look down to type, you look up to think. So one solution to that is to write by using some kind of software that will capture your words. I personally use Dragon when I write books, but it can be other things too. I think Adrian made a comment about working with the example, which I'll come back to. Adrian, that's good. And Adrian, you use, if I remember rightly, you have an unusual software to do sound to text, don't you? I think you told me once that you had it read to you, or Adrian's quite good with technology. And so whatever you do, Google these days will take in a whole lot of it. Their speech to text is quite good. And so you want to think by looking up, write at the same time, however you do it. Then once it's written, you want to read it out loud to yourself. And that means it doesn't necessarily need to be you. It can be a reader who is reading your text back to you and giving you a few links. Then finally, last thing to consider is what kind of grammar help you're getting. It used to be that the word was about as good as it got when you turned up, go into the editing portions, Microsoft Word, you just highlight everything that's a checker. So you'll get a lot of green marks, you'll get a lot of red marks, and it'll help. But since then, Grammarly has seriously upgraded, and there is something called FlickWrite, and you those two. So a little bit of grammar help doesn't hurt at all. Again, read back to you, you read it out loud to yourself, you have the computer read to you, talking into the computer, and then just going through some micro lessons on writing. Now, if you subscribe to the opt-in for 365 motivational emails, regularly you will get podcast videos that are or that have to do with academic writing. And what I find in my life is that when I'm upgrading a particular skill, I listen a lot to other people talk about it. It just sinks in better. There's more stacks I can make on those new neuro pathways, the faster I learn. Teams getting connection problems. Tell me more about the connection problems. And here, a little robotic. All right, well, there's hardly anything on. Could be that I was too far away from my microphone. Does this help? Any better? 1, 2, 3. And it's possible that something is sinking in the background. So I will turn off a few of those pesky things on our hard drive that sync. And maybe that will more bandwidth. Any better? Could be that my bandwidth in the southern part of Ireland just dropped too, and I won't be able to. No, I can see an error message. Presenter has poor connection. Well, we'll tough it out. The good thing is that Big Marker seems to record well. So if you have a challenge listening, you will likely still be able to hear well in the recording. How that happens, I don't know, but so far that seems to be the case. I have the same red message, but it doesn't worry me overly because frequently I have that red message and it doesn't always result in bad sound. So, part and parcel to living in the part of the world that I do. So, no silver bullets when it comes to technology, and no silver bullets at all when it comes to editing. First off, you have to be willing to do tough work when you write, edit, and review. How many of you, raise your hand if you have found that it's very difficult to edit your own work? I find it nearly impossible to do a good job of editing my own work. And so we have to be willing to be tough with ourselves and not to fall in love with the words that we write on the paper. So just absorb the fact that all work can be better. There is no work that can be sent to an editor and it will come back without anything. For one thing, editors are required of themselves, they require to make your work better. So they're looking for every possible thing that they can find. This will be the same with your examiners. So all work can be better. Writing matures as you see the same ideas in different ways. This is unfortunate in some regards because you're writing documents that are 200 pages long. So it's quite likely that by the time you finish your document, you are better at saying the concepts that you are interested in than you were at the beginning. This is why you want to go back and rewrite your first chapter at all costs when you're done. You'll just mention things differently. Assume that everyone wants to help you and that any criticism your writing takes is because someone wants to help. If you can make that assumption and you can hear critical comments without having a defensive reaction at the time. And you want to look for different types of errors. I'll go into that more in a little bit. And finally, continue to read. Read about writing and read the kinds of writing that you're doing. Editing relies on feedback from a trusted source. And if you have difficulty, if you are in a position and you want to hire an editor, the first thing you need to do is make sure that that person is a trusted source. I've heard lots of people very upset because they paid a lot, meaning thousands of dollars or euros for editing, and they weren't satisfied. Well, that has a two-way street. It isn't as though the editor did wrong, but several things can go wrong in the process. So you're responsible for these things, whether or not you're editing yourself, someone else is editing you, or maybe you're part of a writing group and everybody is editing these others. First off, agree upon a mutually agree upon a template. So if I was going to an editor or writing group with my thesis, I would travel along with the thesis that I liked that was accepted by my university. And I would say, I want this document, my document, to meet this standard, its standard. And then use that as the template or agreed upon standard to which you strive. Some universities will have rubrics or rules that you need to attend to. Revision is iterative. You show me a document today, I'm going to pick up, knowing that you can't take it all in at once, and I couldn't find it all at once. I'm going to pick up the top 5 or 10 things I think you should work on. You'll bring that document back to me, and I'm going to pick up a few other things. It took care of the 5 or 10 in good stead. Now I can focus on the middle ground things that are wrong. However, you, the student, are likely to say, why didn't you tell me this the first time? Well, you didn't hear it the first time because the things that were focused on the first time seemed more important to the person you were working with. So it's a relationship, and understand that you couldn't possibly take it all in the first time. It's a very, very complex task. But I appreciate your sense of why didn't I hear this, and that too can be true. Some people only give you the top 2 or 3 things they see, and then they don't come back. So once again, that goes back to feedback from a trusted source. Share the feedback you've had before. If you're working with an advisor and now you're working with the group, take the feedback from the advisor to the group. Let people know what other people are saying. So you'll get feedback on the feedback as well as feedback on your work. Your work will go faster as a result of that. And Adrienne points out that she's redoing a chapter right now, and it's much easier to write the second time or with a revision. It is. So when you're editing, if you are going to someone else to edit and they are paying them, agree on time and price. It's a contractual arrangement. Don't have surprises. Agree on the focus. So I want this to be grammatically correct. My English must be right. Takes the focus off of the coherence of ideas. Or I'm a little concerned about the coherence of ideas. Watch out for redundancy. The more things, obviously, you put on the list, the longer the time it'll take and the greater the price. You are in control, and I would always recommend that you get editing back in stages. So let somebody edit something, a little something, see what they're doing, have comments about that, make sure you're on the same page, and then keep going. Obviously, there have been students in my past who had difficulty with people editing. And I want you to see all of that. But it also is useful to you because now I want you to have in your head what it's like to be an editor of your work or other people's. And the first thing you need to be aware of is the importance of coherence. If your thesis is not close to 100% coherent, one part to another, you will have difficulty in examination. This is the single biggest reason people have difficulty. The difference between a few edits and a year's worth of edits is whether or not the people who read your work believe it is coherent. It's that important. And the reason it's important and the reason it's hard for you to do is all of us to do, not just you, but certainly students through the academic writing process the first time, is that there's 3 levels of coherence. Coherence of ideas, coherence of wording, and coherence of writing habits. So, let's talk about wording. Textural coherence, coherence and connections between the text so that your reader can go along with you, and both of those things add up to the readability. Textual coherence. Are you using same or similar words when you discuss your concepts? And if the answer to that question was similar, how similar are they? So there are tools to help you with coherence of wording. Types of text, language devices, linking concepts and relationships, and same wording for the essential elements. Let's look at some rules. Academic writing is formal, it's explicit, it's precise, it's unbiased, and you are responsible for the content of it. And by responsible, we mean not provocative and interesting without being sensational. You are also responsible for writing to a particular referencing style that is prescribed by your university. Your referencing style requires that you handle your citations and references in a certain way, and you should never have anthropomorphism. So let's see if some of these exercises can help you understand what I just laid out in a list. I want you to read these 3 examples, and we'll give you some time for this, and choose one, and then type out, please, what's not quite right about it. So example number 1, the researchers couldn't assign the treatment at random. Example number 2, the professional development program was persuaded to be interviewed. And example number 3, it has been stated that students with external locus of control deny responsibilities. So just please, if you would, the people in the room, choose one and comment. Okay, Annalene points out that the word couldn't, a contraction, is what we would call casual writing in example number 1. Adrian says, assign and at random contradict each other in example 1. The researchers couldn't assign the treatment at random. Or, if not exactly contradictory, unclear use of verb with that particular meaning. You could perhaps say, you could make some justifications for how assignment might have been, but certainly a verb choice wasn't good. Number 2, oh, Joy, I'm glad you caught it. That is anthropomorphism. a program is not something that can be persuaded. The most common anthropomorphic error is when you say this study reports, this study does something or other, or this research, and you use a verb that personalizes the outcome as though that's the study or your research was an active participant. Anthropomorphism. So no, professional program can't be persuaded. Anybody want to take a stab at number 3? Cite it. Who has stated this and where? Yes, precisely. All right. So let's see what example number 1, formal aspect of academic writing. Number 2, no anthropomorphism. And 3, use citation. Well done. All right, let's keep going. And I think I might have, yes. Now we need to talk about language devices that link sentences. Why is it important to link sentences? Because you want your reader to flow through your work. I talk in other of these series, especially for those of you writing the Lit Review. Go back to the Lit Review webinars, because there's a lot about writing about other people's literature that's a lot like funneling your reader down from the broad-based ideas that are out there in the field to the specifics of how people did the work and then into your study. When you're funneling a reader from one point to another, you need to have an idea about language and how one kinds of devices link to each other. Some of you may be writing in a language that is not your first language, and that the linkages are the kinds of things that we often get in our ear and understanding if we've been speaking the language we are writing in our entire life. So if English or whatever language you are writing in is not your first language, then listen carefully to how people link things. So sentences and the ideas they express should be linked smoothly. Transitions are provided by signal or transitional words and phrases, and they direct your reader's attention. They allow for coherence. And once again, it goes twice. So continuation. And of course, this is this and. First of all, this, which implies that there will be a second. This also happens. In addition, next, and finally. So these are things that take us to a sense of 1, 2, 3. We're going through a set of ideas, and we're cued when we start, and we're cued when we end. Change of direction. But, although, instead of, on the contrary, despite, yet, that means that we've transitioned from one thing, but not quite this way. Sequence. This is very useful in literature review because there's a lot of ideas. You want to make them concise because they're not really your ideas. They're the ideas that lead to your ideas. But you want the reader to be able to go through them easily. And then if you do a colon in first, second, third, before, after, as an illustration, for example, for instance, specifically, such as, all of these things allow the reader to know I've read a concept and now I'm going to read an example. Or here's 3 concepts, 1, 2, 3, or sequence is very important. Emphasis, a significant factor, especially relevant. Above all, a primary concern. These say, watch here. Our reptilian brain is wired to catch things that are different. Goes back to when things that were different were scary and likely to cause harm. So in our very most basic place, we are wired to catch emphasis. Use it significantly. Don't use it all the time, or you put your reader to sleep. Cause, condition, or result. Since this is true, because, unless, in order that, and therefore. These are just some examples, but very useful ones to have on a sheet somewhere. Spatially, is it under, is it behind, in front of that? Comparison, contrast, more than A is more than B, likewise, different from, less than, conclusion, in conclusion, finally, and in summary. And we've given you the references. So let's look at these. And you don't need to write out the whole sentence, but you might write down, how would you link these three sentences? Sentence 1, educators are continually looking for proven, innovative ways to help students improve their writing skills. Some kind of a linkage. This research benefits school administrators, classroom and specialist teachers, students, parents, software providers, curriculum developers that are creating digital writing programs. Another kind of linkage. And then local and state assessment officials may be interested in the potential cost savings of this kind of software. So the idea is what you put in the middle. Raise your hand if you give up. Good for you, Nate. Let's see what we might say. Educators are continually looking for proven, innovative ways to help students improve their writing skills. Therefore, beneficiaries of this research include school administrators, classroom, etc. Also, local, state assessment and officials may be interested. So, small words, just a little bit of beginning. But if we had just put those three sentences together in a paragraph, we might have said there was more than one point going on. But because of the transitional words used in the middle of the paragraph, two little words, we can see that the top idea is drilling down to the last one. And that, in fact, the point are the people who would be beneficiaries of this program. So there are a couple of reasons that people have to be hypersensitive to transitions. Watch for them when you read. And real quickly, it's like you've decided to buy a red car and then everywhere you see a red car. Have any of you had that experience? Well, look for transitional words and you'll begin to see them and you'll begin to understand critically how people use them. Now then, we have to link our concepts and the relations that we have. So in order to have a coherent text, we have to link the concepts and the relationships among them explicitly and implicitly. The former is preferred in a thesis and dissertation, so explicit linkages. Although there are times that you want to downplay something, and so you might implicitly bring it up. But most of the time, everything we do is explicit. To learn concepts in relation, you can use the methods of logical organization, and in other webinars, and certainly you can go on any of the Doctoral Net sites, any of the university sites, and go to the search, which is on your control panel in the upper right-hand corner, and search for organization tactics. It's also also argumentation, because argumentation is the kind of logical organization that will work most efficiently for a thesis or dissertation. All right, so habits. How do you get from where you are now to being a good writer? Well, it has to do with what you do every day, every day. First things first. What are your goals for the outcomes of the writing you're doing right now? Do you want to graduate easily? Do you want to influence your field? Do you want to prepare yourself for your next career advancement, or you want your reader to see your expertise? If you are interested in taking your work to a book, then you are influencing your field and preparing your career. If you are taking your ideas to journals, again, the two things. So each one of these has influence, personal advancement, and then, of course, graduating is always good, right? So what do they need? They all three follow prescribed formats, and the formats are different. So first thing you have to do is you have to know what format you're writing to. If you are in a program where you write a number of articles, then you'd better have journal articles down. If you're in a program where you're going to write a thesis, then you'd better understand the logic of the thesis. And again, we have lots of micro-learning on that. Also, if you are going to influence your field, you need to be both rigorous and precise. Influencers aren't slackers, and they are provocative. And so those things are, you need to look at other people who you find provocative and precise and emulate them until it comes naturally to you. We, human beings, learn through mimicking. Really take advantage of that at this time in your careers. It will make your career advancement goes much faster. What are the challenges you face? Well, organization, time management, precision, and perseverance. How many of you can identify with any of those challenges? Erica, good to see you. I didn't realize you'd come in. The couple of things about those challenges. I've done 4 in a 5-part series on the variables that research point to as causing PhDs to disengage from their studies. And so within the idea of organization, you can break that out into, it's hard to be organized if you find your environment ambiguous. It's hard to be organized if you haven't gotten the work-life balance thing correct. And the play between being independent and having enough development also come into play with all of these. So you may be interested in going back to the previous webinars, and then the one that will also come into play that will happen in April is the webinar on support. And organization and time management, and are in the middle section of the Doctoral Net sites, are skills and that you can be developing, and it will bring you up content and micro interesting things to overview. And then precision and perseverance are both excellent qualities in both writing and in organization and time management. So there's a lot of overlap as to how these things weave themselves together in our professionalism. Organization, I'm going to go quickly through these 3 points. You'll have the slides. You want to lay out, if you're going to write a book, they require you to lay out the entire writing and then put goals and objectives for each section. That is not a bad thing to do. It's actually been done for you if you're writing a thesis. So just go learn what happens in each section and why. On the Doctoral Net site, there's one of our objectives is that you should always know the purpose of what you're doing. So you can look up purpose for these portions. Outline before you write, because if you don't, you're going to be sloppy. Use a document map or navigation pane if you're using Word. If you don't know what I mean, go back and look at the other things where we have discussed. Oh, take the 30-day writing challenge. That's probably the fastest way to learn about how to use Microsoft Word as a tool rather than a hindrance to your writing. All sorts of materials into folders. That has to do with how you use your bibliographic software. Again, there's lots of material on all of these. These are very kind of complex but teachable ideas, and we cover them. Dictation I've already talked about. Write a section, set it aside, edit it fairly quickly, and then put it aside again, and come back to it for the second edit. Edit by reading out loud. Time management, if you don't know about backwards mapping, again, it's a whole thing on the website. Or set up a system. A lot of people here, thanks to Adrian, are very fond of kanbanflow.com as a time management. And whatever you do, use it. And you won't use it all the time. None of us do. The thing is to go back to it when you fall off of it. So it is an underlying structure, whether it's an active structure or not. 15 to 30 minutes a day doing your thesis work is 2 or 3 times more effective than trying to do 1 day a week, because it keeps your mind a little bit on it, and your mind will work for you that way. Human beings are wired to build over time, and large projects build slowly over a long time. So use that basic neurological truth to your advantage and do a little bit. Get up 15 to 30 minutes earlier, do a little bit each day, and things will progress much more than if you say, I'm going to do it on Saturday, and then every other Saturday you can't for some reason. Precision, dictate, we've talked about. Set up your own peer review. You can't be precise enough. You just have to keep trying. I'll go on. And then perseverance. This is actually the most important slide of the entire deck. The people who graduate are the ones who persevered. They're the ones who kept it up, and when they fell down, they came back and they kept going until they got it done. And you don't get to know the advantages this degree brings to your life until you have the degree. And it is a huge stepping stone. People don't treat anybody differently, as much differently as they treat you before or after you've got a DR in front of your name. So it does open doors, and it does allow for other things to transpire that never could if you hadn't have done it. And a whole part of that is that you've proved to the world you can do it. So you figure out ways to keep working, even if your stuff is over at your supervisor's, you're doing something else so that your work is continuous, and then it goes much easier. I told you I had a lot of slides today. I do have a few minutes I'm happy to go back and focus on something I zipped over. I hope that the 3 big ideas you got were that coherence is not accidental. There are grammatical ways that you can build coherence and flow into your writing because of how you use words. I also hope that you understand the personal side of writing, which is the discipline of it, and the requirement that the task you are part of, you wouldn't want it to be easy, would you? I mean, if it was easy, it wouldn't be a big deal to be a doctor of something. But it is a big deal, and it's a big deal because all of these things suddenly become eminently important. As you're typing out your questions, let me just say, and then I'll be able to shut off the recording, there are a number of things coming up on webinars for the next month are the big development. So critical thinking, parts 1 and part 2, and then part 1 has already happened, and then critical thinking part 2, and then she'll do critical analysis part 1 and part 2. And she's already told me that there's a couple more things in this series because Maria is excellent at breaking down complex ideas into small, finite steps and giving you examples that are everyday that then you can focus on the bigger issues of academia with. Joanne is a longtime journal editor, and she will be doing a 2-parter as well on how to get published. And then I come back in April with the finding and utilizing the supports you need in graduate education. I will be traveling in the United States. I'll be talking to doctoral students at the universities there that we support. And from that, I'll be coming back to this with more ideas about how we can better support you. But if you are interested in different kinds of things, or you've seen something that you thought, oh, I wish Doctoral Net would do that, whatever it is, if you sign into whichever site you belong to, and you go up to the right-hand side of your control panel, there is a give feedback. You can even report it as a bug, but it'll get through to Sonia, and she is responsible for us for designing the things that you need to have more supports in your life with the technology that can back up what your universities do. So time for questions. Neem says, can I ask a question about active and passive sentences? One of my favorites. I've spent hours redoing active and passive sentences. Find active sentence language reads better, but often passive is encouraged. Ooh, 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 really? Okay, and many favorite academic writers use both. Yes, once you're out of the thesis world, you'll write like you, and you will develop your own voice. And because most of us talk in a passive way, we would say people are doing, you, etc. Then people who aren't editing and re-editing their work will have more passive sentences. And I don't always hold myself to an active level. I do hold myself to active when I'm writing for journals, and I certainly would if I was writing a thesis. Now, for those of you that have ever struggled with a passive sentence, people doing da-da-da, did this, are this, are being probably the most used. One hint that I can have is try reversing the sentence. Probably in the second half of the sentence will be an adverb that could in fact be a verb if the back half of the sentence became the first half of the sentence and then you went on. And active definitely reads better. It carries active. It's active. It carries your reader. I am not, when I examine, I am not gung-ho about reading. You know, I have known examiners who literally had a Word document up on their computer and they did a search and find for R to see the number of, to just get a sense of the passivity of the document. I don't do that, and I don't look out for anthropomorphism. I probably could. Those are the two things that some other examiners will be super critical of, and you better not have it. Is that helpful, Naeem? You can have a conversation with this about 2 or 3 people. You can get the pulse of your university. The cool thing is, listen to me use casual voice, but it is really nice, is that once you're out, some of these rules aren't so necessary to consider. Who else has a question for me? With that, I will turn off the recording. Thank you for watching, people who come back by recording.